Welcome everyone, my name is Balabanian. Can't look at myself. And today I want to talk about mixed reality. And I don't mean like a Magic Leap headset or a Windows mixed reality headset. I mean the green screen mixed reality way of making videos for VR. So if you've seen videos of virtual reality, chances are you've probably seen a green screen mixed reality video. It's basically a third person view of a player in virtual reality standing in a green screen, and rather than seeing the green, you see the environment, the virtual environment around them. This is one good example of something that I worked on with Danny Bittman. I used to do a lot of mixed reality streaming back in the day, and I hosted something called Tiltbrush Tuesdays, which was basically a show on Twitch where we featured a lot of virtual reality artists and 3D modelers that came in. It was a ton of fun to do, and I learned a ton of how to direct these virtual reality live streams. What is interesting to look at, what's not, and how could you be doing it all with basically one person. There's a lot of great videos about what mixed reality is, how to set it up, all that good jazz. But today I kind of want to talk about what you should shoot in mixed reality. When is it effective and when is it not? And what are some possible applications that people still have not yet thought about? It's one thing to get it working, which is not easy. Even if you have a good camera and good lighting, good green screen key and everything, it's really situationally dependent to use certain camera angles for certain games, for certain situations, right? What's a good analogy? Imagine you are trying to watch a World Cup game, but the only camera angle you can watch it from is from a GoPro mounted onto the goalkeeper, to the goalie. And that's the whole game, is you have to watch it from that perspective. Yes, there are situations where you would want to see that camera angle, but that's not the grand majority of the game. The most you should be watching is like a third-person perspective. Similarly, there are certain situations in VR where you would rather be watching from a third-person perspective than from first. For those games and those situations, mixed reality is great. So I'm going to give you some guidelines to figure out what are good games to use in mixed reality. Basically, it breaks down to three main things. If the game has physical agility, so if the player actually has to move around a lot, it has to do some cool-looking shit that we as human beings, we as monkeys, like to watch other monkeys do crazy flips and crazy cool, physical, agile things. If the game involves swords, you want to be looking at that in mixed reality. It looks super cool if someone is like, you know, in a stance and like actually slicing through. Liv has some awesome content that they've built around Beat Saber and even Fruit Ninja and showing how cool things like that could look. Second is when you want to be showing scale of the VR world to the person, to the player themselves. So I use this a lot in my Tiltbrush mixed reality videos where the artist is painting something, but you want to see how grand of a world that they've actually painted around that thing itself. It's nice to be able to pull the camera out of the person's head and show you like the physical scale difference between the artist and their art. And third is when the player is showing emotion. A lot of our emotion is done obviously through our face, which is kind of hard when you have a VR headset on and you're not seeing as much about the facial expressions that you typically would with a Twitch stream or a YouTuber video with a picture-in-picture video like right over here. So a lot of the times players in VR have to be physically emotive. That involves basically visual humor and other forms of like body language to evoke emotions. It's hard to see exactly how the person is emoting when you're just looking at it through their own eyes. You might be able to do certain things with your hands, funny gestures, or like explain certain things with your hands, but for the most part, if you want to be showing emotion, you want to be showing the person from the third person perspective. Here are some examples of when not to use mixed reality. Number one, and I see this happening a lot actually, is when you're in a first-person shooter or any form of shooting game in VR, you, as a viewer, if you're interested in watching someone be a good player in a game like that, you want to be looking exactly down the eye that they're using to aim the gun with. Care about how accurate they are at finding a target and firing. So it's nice to show a third-person perspective when they're actually, like, let's say in the beginning when they're running around with teammates, or they're talking with other people, they're gesturing and having some funny interactions. But when you're actually trying to show the gameplay, you're much better off looking down their headset view. Another example is when someone is doing some fine movements that you can barely tell from a third-person perspective, and so you want to be in their eye looking exactly at what they're doing. So in tilt brush, when an artist is doing really fine maneuvers, you want to be in their eyes looking at what they're doing rather than looking at the scale of the world around them when they're working on something really small. So basically, it's very situationally dependent, and there's no rule of thumb when it comes to this game is good for MR, this game is bad for MR. I think all games that support it can benefit it from one way or another, but it really takes some foresight. But it really takes some experience and maybe a little bit of feedback to think about, what am I showing on the screen right now, and is this interesting, or is this the best angle I can be using to be showing what's going on? You know, you really have to try to take a perspective of an audience member that's looking at this video, and would you, not being in the room, understand what is going on just by visually looking at it? I think that's a very important question. To kind of wrap this up, I want to present one more idea that I really wish developers and players kind of took more advantage of. And it's something that I've seen online called partial mixed reality, where it's basically just using the foreground element of the mixed reality composite and doing a augmented reality overlay over a video of like me in this room. But I used this back in the day to play with like GPU particles or with tilt brush, and it's a really interesting thing to look at because it's kind of relatable, but it's also magical at the same time. I saw someone on YouTube named Virtual Dave showing it off to show like certain gun games, and I think that could be a really cool way of, like, you know, maybe not showing the full on gameplay, but it's a cool way of showing, it's a cool way. There's got to be some use cases that can come out of that, and I think if developers build a mode for it, you don't even need a green screen for that format. So keep producing cool videos and putting them out and streaming, and I'm excited to see it. See you guys next time.